my secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Hello, welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States at Ibapa. This is your host, producer Mike. No air horns because I am the only host for this episode. So this past July, I was in Washington, D.C., basically for work, but I figured that while I was out there, I would meet up with some of the folks that we've met with through the podcast or folks that are friends or friends of friends and just get a sense of what life is like for Filipino Americans out in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so we lined up kind of an assortment of conversations with folks. First one being with Malaka Gharib, who is an artist and writer who works for NPR. And then we just happened to run into Javier Fernandez, who is one of the co-owners of a restaurant called Kuya Ja, and spoke with him and his front of house manager, Dominic. And then we end with a conversation with Eden Picazo, someone who went to UC Irvine with me and Elaine, but now is based out in DC and works as an archivist. So we'll get into like what does that all mean and what their experiences are like. But just a note that the last two conversations were held in public spaces, and so there's a little bit of background noise. So hopefully that doesn't distract you from the great conversations that we had. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So I am in DC, going around invading people's houses apparently, checking with some folks that we've met through the podcast or just through mutual friends. And so today I'm in the house of
Malaka Gharib.
And how's it going?
It's going good, thank you. It's raining here. It's kind of cold for the summer.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to have you here in the house.
I was going to say, I've been to DC so many times, and what I expected it to be was rainy and thundery, but also muggy. And I think it's starting to creep in today, but yesterday was kind of nice, but also torrential.
Yeah. And cold, very cold, strangely cold.
Yeah. I think, coming from LA, we're in the middle of a heat wave. Actually, this is kind of a nice respite. Mm-hmm. So we're hanging out in your house. Just, enjoying some coffee and some banana chips, which thank you very much.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us, what it is that you're doing out here in DC?
Yeah, so I'm an artist, a writer, and a journalist. I've been here for 10 years. I am from Cerritos, California. Cerritos and Cerritos Auto Square. And
yes.
I really like the TV show Felicity and imagined myself to be a proper East Coaster, just like Felicity. So I moved out here and I stayed out here, found my husband, found a job here. And that's where I am now. I still can't believe I'm here.
So what is your day job?
I work at NPR. I'm a journalist. I write about, I write, not do audio, but I write about humanitarian issues and conflict and poverty.
And I was saying, I think before we started recording, I was a little intimidated to do this with somebody who works at NPR, where we're at this kind of random Filipino-esque offshoot called This Filipino American Life. Don't tell anybody about us.
But I told you that I'm not a radio person, so I wouldn't even begin to know anything about this machine that you're using, which looks very fancy.
Just, little Zoom recorder. So you've been out here for the last decade or so, right? And you're originally in Cerritos. So you grew up in Cerritos, you went to school there, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Cerritos. Cerritos, if you don't know it, it's an Asian bubble. There's a lot of Koreans, Filipinos, Hispanic people, and Chinese people, Taiwanese people. And I went to a pretty much all Filipino Catholic school, and I just had this obsession with white people while I was there, which is probably why I wanted to move to the East Coast. And I had this dream that when I would go to this East Coast school and I would start wearing preppy clothes and just be an East Coaster, like the people that I saw on TV. And and then somehow, somewhere along the way in the past 10 years, I realized that was not a very good aspiration. I probably should have just been the person I was all along. And that is what I've been struggling with as an adult. I'm 32 years old now, and realizing that the choices that I may have made in life were spurred from this want to be something that I wasn't, or maybe that was who I was all along, or maybe I suppressed a part of me that could have been. And there's all these woulda, coulda, shoulda things about my personality. Like, did I like Radiohead because I was trying to be white, or did I like it because I genuinely liked it? There's so many things, and now I'm like, my mind is like all a muddle. So that's where I am right now. That's my headspace.
I mean, I think that's interesting because, I mean, for those of you that don't know Cerritos, I mean, it's a kind of a suburb to the southeast of Los Angeles. And I'm from Oxnard, which is a suburb kind of to the northwest of Los Angeles, where I feel like sometimes it's like very much valued to both, integrate and kind of align with the dominant culture, but at the same time find a way to set yourself apart, and so that you feel like you have an identity of your own. I think like I was one of the few like Filipino kids who was into like grunge rock at the time, or like would like listen to like Pearl Jam unironically, while my friends were kind of getting into like the Far Side and like into Dr. Dre and things like that. But I also listened to that too, and I think like maybe it's just part of like growing up in a very kind of like very specific community, and especially like in a school in which it's a very intimate setting, and like everyone just knows who you are, and everybody maybe seen you throughout your entire youth kind of grow into whoever it is you are now. And I listen to Radiohead because I like Radiohead, just to say that. So, but
I totally, what you just said, like I actually haven't heard anybody say that out loud before. I just don't have that many people to talk about this with, and I was just thinking about how, my sister, she is full Filipino, and she is really into urban culture, and she has a very urban look about her. She likes like hip hop, and she does Filipino dancing, and she does like Tahitian dancing, and all of her friends are Filipino also, and she, like, what I'm trying to say is that like when I was in high school too, I wanted to set myself apart to listen to punk music. So I listened to like the Germs and X and Sonic Youth, and like,
all great choices, by the way.
Thank you. All these punk bands, but I also was like very adept at knowing like the latest Far Side song, or like the remixes of like, or just like A Tribe Called Quest, like stuff that like underground hip hop, which Filipinos loved at the time. So I was like very adept at both. And my husband, who's from the South, my husband's from Tennessee, but every time like an old school hip hop song comes along, like a Usher plays or something, he's like, "How do you know like every '90s hip hop song?" And it was like, "I'm Filipino. Like we just like know this," or I don't know. I think that's like a major
You feel like there's maybe some kind of like intrinsicness to like some of those things?
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that like I totally get what you're saying about like wanting to set yourself apart by listening to like white music and genuinely liking that, but also being interested in what the predominant Filipino culture was listening to at the time. And that's just that. I guess I have no more thoughts than that. I could explore that, but I don't know what else to say about that.
I mean, this is something that like I've thought about too, in terms of like all the different kind of parts of our identities, right? Like Filipino-ness being maybe one of them, but like, with each part of our identity comes like this desire to either fit into whatever that is generally defined as, or like what feels like most connects you to that part of your identity, right? And so like the fact that I grew up in a town that was, at least I went to school with like mostly like pretty diverse, like Hispanic, Latino, Filipino, Korean, Vietnamese, but a lot of white people that didn't quite understand like who I was, at least, on the face of me. I just happened to be surrounded by a lot of rock music, right? But I would go back to my spaces with like my relatives or friends like in my street, who were listening primarily to hip hop. Was like it at a very early age was like, okay, if I'm with my Filipino friends, we're gonna be listening to hip hop because that's just how it goes. But if I'm hanging out with like other friends from school, of course I'm gonna be listening to Soundgarden, you know, because that's what they were listening to in that space. And so it's kind of like those are all parts of who I am, and therefore those are all things that I will care about. And then at a certain point, you realize that part of kind of those identities, as you kind of step into the different distinct spaces, you take those things on, and whether or not that's authentically because you care about it or because it's a fact you feel like you connect with that space. I mean,
wow.
Anyways, I'm getting really academic about this.
No, but actually, that's amazing for me to like hear that out loud. I mean, I feel like I thought I was like the weirdest person on the planet, but to like hear somebody else say that is very nice. Yeah.
But you know that weird is the new normal.
Yeah.
So I mean, so you grew up in Cerritos, and then. When did you come out to DC? Was that like after college or like?
Yeah, I came out after college. I graduated during the recession. I had these grand plans to go to New York City to pursue Felicity's life, where I would like live this big dream, work in a really cool job. I wanted to be a magazine editor, and print was dead in 2008. Everybody was laying everyone off, and I had an internship here in DC, and I ended up. I mean, DC at the time was 2008, so like that was the year Obama was elected, so president. So there was just things were booming here, things were changing, the city was happening, and there were jobs. So I stayed, and there still are jobs here, which is nice. So.
But I mean, did you immediately feel just a broad kind of like difference in terms of like vibe, culture?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what was that like? Was there like a culture shock involved in that, or?
Yeah, moving from Cerritos to Syracuse, I distinctly remember this conversation that we had before I left for college. My uncle lives with us at home, Tita Maro, and my mom were sitting on the dinner table, and they were talking about how very expensive it was to send me to school at Syracuse. They said, you're going to take a lot of student loans on, you need to understand the gravity of that. And I got into UCSD at the time. I could have gone there, and but I didn't want to go there because I wanted to have Felicity's experience. And they told me that the reason that they allowed me to go to school on the East Coast was because, like, we want you, like, when you graduate, the world outside Cerritos is going to be very white, and you need to learn how to survive in that environment. So when you go there, like, that's exposure for you. Learn how they eat with a fork and knife. Dress how they do.
So where's the spoon?
Yeah, like if they're wearing V-neck sweaters and J. Crew, you do the same. Like, you need to assimilate and learn how to be like them, because when you graduate, that's what the real world is going to be like for you. So you need to be competitive, and you need to learn from them. And so I took this very seriously because I listened to my family as a 17-and-a-half-year-old at the time. And when I got to Syracuse, it really was so very white. I was really surprised. And I was unable to differentiate between white people. I thought like one tall woman was the same woman as one short woman. And like, I couldn't tell the difference because I just didn't. Cerritos doesn't have very many white people. You said Oxnard did, but definitely not Cerritos. So when I went to Syracuse, it was very white, but I earnestly tried to learn from them. I remember when white people like stuck out their hand to like greet you. They said like, "Hi, my name is like so and so," and I don't know, in like Filipino culture, you're not really supposed to like be the loudest duck in the room when you enter a place. And like, so I had to learn how to be like, "Hi, my name is Malaka," like really loud. And, I did try to eat with a fork and knife and whatever. And I changed my style. I was very punk when I came from Cerritos. I skateboarded, I drummed, I made zines, and then I came back home one day and I was wearing it was a Tommy Hilfiger Oxford shirt with the collar popped.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there.
I had Nautica jackets on top of that too. So
yeah, oh god, yeah. So I basically turned into a different person, and sadly, it sort of fared well when I graduated into the real world, because it was just what Tita Maro said. People can say all day that DC is a very diverse place. It is, but it will never be as diverse as what Cerritos was.
Yeah.
Whereas truly, my mom had a Filipino hairstylist and a Filipino person who made the ham for Christmas. We just had, DC, yes, it is a diverse place, but when I enter the office space, it is very predominantly white. And so, Tita Mara was right in a way, and I guess it was good for him to set me up with that expectation. But now I'm searching for, I don't know, a sense of home here too.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the fact that you come from Cerritos and the South Bay in general, for those that don't know, is probably one of the most diverse places in the country. Like demographically, like I think it's like Bellflower, specifically Artesia, even.
Cerritos High School was named once like the most diverse high school in the country. Yeah.
And so I mean, like that gives you access to a lot of different kind of identities, experiences, and things to kind of contend with. And like, yeah, as you kind of grow into like adulthood in the professional world and realizing that not every like workplace or city or whatever is the same as like what you experience. I mean, that's one of those things that like is kind of like whether or not you're prepared for it, you're gonna be in it, you know. Tangent. Elaine was supposed to go to Rutgers because she was gonna study film or something else other than that, and her parents kind of gave her a choice, like we can at least let you go to this East Coast school and do that thing, or we'll buy you a car. And she picked the car.
Oh, wow.
And so if not for the fact that she'd valued a car over getting like kind of this broader education outside of California, I would have never met her in college. We'd never gotten married. So totally random tangent. But no, yeah, I mean, I think like, and yeah, even so I went to UC Irvine, which is like in South Orange County for those that don't know.
We called it Cerritos High Part 2.
Yeah, right? Because it's such a diverse school too. And so I think it's like 60% Asian American or something.
Yeah.
And not just like a monolithic like East Asian, it's like everybody. And so yeah, like post that, like, you know, and moving into LA was like even culture shock for me. So you coming from basically the most diverse part of the country into places that are ostensibly diverse, but then working in a space in which you're definitely kind of, you know, either you're feeling othered or other folks are like, you know, feeling very kind of distant from what you're used to or comfortable with, you know, must have been the transition.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shocks to me is that in Cerritos High School, when I remember the most commonly asked question was, "What are you?" It was a really important first question to ask. Like, I know it's a very, very loaded question now and there's lots of conversations that are had about what are you and whether it's offensive or not. And it's a conversation that I've had a lot with people of color. But at the time in Cerritos, when you have the difference between somebody from Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, and like they're, you know, this person may be a dancer in the Indian club and that really is really their MO and it's really important to them, like asking this question is an important question because then you can, I mean, for many in our high school, it was a way to talk about yourself and identity, and that mattered to you as a person. And I've actually fact checked this with like other members of high school at the time. And for me, like not being asked that at Syracuse, I think that a lot of people didn't know how to talk about race, or maybe they didn't know that I was an ethnic person. But for me, my identity was very important, and and not being able to ask that, not knowing how to talk about that with people who weren't of color was difficult for me, and at times, in retrospect, now felt very isolating. So for a long time, we didn't even talk about that. I'm still friends with the people that I'm friends with in college, and even only now they said like, wow, I didn't know how much your ethnicity meant to you as a person. And we've been friends for 15 years. And we lived with each other for all 4 years of college. And they just, you know, it just never was a topic of conversation then.
Oh. So you said earlier, I mean, you describe yourself as an artist, and you said earlier that you had worked on like zines and things like that. What was that all about? Like, what would you write about?
Do you remember Skylight Books in LA?
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, still there. Yeah. So there was when I was 14, there's a zine section, and I never understood what zines were about, but there's
and they still have it, although it's in the store next door, their magazine store.
Really?
Yeah, they still
have a magazine store?
Yeah.
But anyways, they have one, and it's like anyone can make a zine, and here's how you make it, and you just like staple the papers together, and then you have your own magazine. And so I started making them when I was 14. I did them on music. Actually interviewed one member of Sonic Youth when I was like 16 at a show, and I was like, "Hi, I have my own zine. Will you please like
Who was it?
let me?" I think it was Thurston Moore.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a very short interview. It was like 2 questions that I asked, but I was very proud. And but anyways,
so that just seeing that you could do that was what led you to doing it.
Yeah. So I always had a zine since I was 14. It was always about music, and then after college, I decided I was interested in food because that seemed cooler. So I did one on food. And then now I make a lot of very, very personal zines. I make these really mini zines that I do in 5 minutes, and I just try to think about a feeling, and then I try to tell a story that evokes that mood, just as a challenge, like to like get my creative juices flowing.
Is that something you still distribute to like in a real way, like to like bookstores, or they just give out to friends? Like how do you?
Well, I have a food zine called The Runcible Spoon, and that was actually a big zine, and we used to like go around and sell it nationally, LA Zine Fest and bookstores like Printed Matter, and we just haven't made an issue since 2014. We had a lot of time in our mid-20s. Now in our late. Early 30s.
It's the privilege of youth,
Yeah, like I just like do not. I would rather watch Love Island on TV, like than make a zine. But I still like sell it on Etsy and distribute it around. But zines have always been like my art medium of choice. Like I really like that you have these very tight constraints, like just a few pages to express yourself. But you can also let a person into your world, a world that you create, like. The Runcible Spoon was all about food and fantasy, and we want to get very wild about how wild can you get with food. So it was a delight. That was very fun, and
So now you're working on a book, right? That's coming out next year.
Yeah.
Is there any like connecting thread from that experience to that book, or what is the book about, I guess?
So the book is about. It's a memoir. It's about. It's called "I Was Their American Dream," and it's basically a journey for me to understand It's a journey to find myself and my own identity. This is very cheesy to say, but it's also about like understanding my parents' expectations from me and assessing whether I've actually met them or not, or trying to explore what that even meant.
And is that, I guess, in your previous kind of like artistic endeavors, would you get that personal, or is this the first time you're really kind of laying that out bare?
Yeah, this is the first time that I've laid it out bare because I was actually inspired after the Trump administration. People were thinking about ways to sort of express their like how to like change things for the better, and some of my friends gave money to the ACLU, others gave to Planned Parenthood. And I was thinking to myself, like, what can I do that's authentically me? And I kept seeing these headlines that were about, like perceptions of immigrants in this country. And I was actually pretty surprised because growing up in Cerritos, I didn't feel like, I grew up with other first-generation Americans, so I didn't really feel that there were any perceptions of Muslims or, of course there are always, but like not so abject. And so I think
you weren't used to kind of like the rawness of like the negative kind of perceptions of all these different because you were just like so used to just being this is just
able
who we
to
are.
coexist. Like I thought that we were cool. But we are not cool. That's literally my thought process. And I started making these little cartoons on my Instagram about like my dad, who's Egyptian Muslim. He doesn't even live in this country. He lives in Cairo. And my mom, like people's perceptions of why immigrants come here is because like they are desperately seeking to like break out of poverty. And that's true for a lot of people. But in some cases, like my mom, like she came from a very upper middle class family in the Philippines, and they were very cushy and they had maids, and my mom like had a great job, and she came to this country because the family decided together as a clan to uproot and move to the United States after in the Marcos administration.
Oh, okay. Was that the driving factor?
Yeah, that was a driving factor. And so like, it's not everybody's story of why they come here is so different, but we were painted in the not news media, I don't want to say that, but in these headlines that I was seeing at the time in 2016, they were just making these big broad strokes, and it felt so untrue. And I thought that maybe if I could just make some cartoons and post them on my Instagram, because I haven't even told these stories to my own friends because I never talk about it, then maybe I can correct some of the misperceptions, or maybe just Yeah.
Interesting. So it was a way to kind of like both start to kind of share that story in a space in which those stories seem to be devalued these days, but also to kind of like connect with the fact that these are these issues that even amongst our kind of our own community that we don't really like address because it's either not an issue that we perceive or we just don't talk about these things, right?
Yeah, but along the way, like I started to like, I never really thought much about race and identity. But along the way, like I just started to like things just, I felt like I had an overwhelming amount of things that I wanted to say. Like cartoon after cartoon came flowing out of me. Like and once it was like a floodgate, and I realized then I had like enough stuff to pitch into a book.
So it's kind of like you started developing kind of like vignettes maybe, and started connecting it and realized you had something there. So, I mean, how far along are you? I mean, I guess it's coming out like what, spring next year, I think?
Yeah, so the final manuscript is done, and now I'm just like making edits, like actually some big structural edits, but making some edits. But it's been an incredible I've been working on this book for nearly 2 years. It will be 2 years in January, I guess, a year and a half. So I've been working on this book for a long time, and I really think of it as a journey, like a identity journey into myself, and like the things that I learned. I mean, I never, as somebody who hasn't thought of this much, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that, well, what did I learn? I don't know, everything's ongoing, right? But like for now, I learned that like some of the choices that I may have made as a young person may have been shaped by society, and that influenced why I did the things now as an adult. That sounds very vague.
So it's kind of like a reflection back on like, this is where I'm at right now. And to some degree or another, that path there and all the things that happened along the way that maybe I never really gave much thought to, now in reflection, maybe had a lot more to do with who I am now than I thought. In some ways. Okay.
Or like, I didn't realize how much I tried not to be Filipino and Egyptian in high school, and how I really tried to be white. And, in high school, people called me whitewashed.
Wow.
And, that's a really bad thing to be called whitewashed in high school. Like, that means that you're a poser, and like,
it's like they're yanking like your cultural access card to the thing that you're actually part of, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess you picked that team like in like the race Olympics, all like Dave Chappelle or something.
Yeah.
But, like
yeah, and so like grappling with that now as an adult, like, why did I do that? Was it because I was ethnically ambiguous and like I felt like I couldn't fit in, so like hung out with the Mexican punks? I don't know. Or maybe it was that. I don't know. But like I said, like a lot of these things come tumbling out, and then now I just, yeah.
You feel like putting this together then has been therapeutic in a way, or has it been like really hard at times? I mean, it sounds like you're kind of getting some very like, very, very personal subjects.
Yeah, I think it's been very therapeutic. I now have like, what I feel like I have is like a bunch of discoveries, and now and the hard part now is what to do with these discoveries, like what to do with them.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing.
Or maybe just putting out there and kind of bring people along the journey of like your own processing of that.
Yeah. I think ultimately I wish that I had this book when I was 15 years old, because then I would have been like, dude, it's all right. Like everything is going to be fine. Like you do you. That's American too. Yeah. You're going to be fine. You don't need to try to be anything. Yeah. You don't need to try to be Felicity, because like you're going to be fine.
Felicity. I hadn't even thought about that show until you brought it up today. I was like, it's been years.
It's very influential.
So that's something that you've been working on basically on the side, right? Because your day job is at
NPR, yeah.
And you're a writer at NPR. What have you written for them that you feel like maybe is like the most true to like what you've been trying to have as your voice in that space?
Well, my beat is on humanitarian issues, so that's like what I write in day out. But sometimes I get to write about things that are really personal. And I got to write about this Filipino food club that I started at NPR. I didn't start it, actually. An intern started it.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was wonderful. It was really nice. We basically this intern came out and said to a friend of mine at work, I'm looking for a Filipino friends. Will you be my Filipino friend? And I thought that was like, wow. I can't imagine myself having asked that when I was 21. I don't know if I would have been so confident to do that.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, maybe things have changed in the workspace. Maybe people can do that. And we basically started gathering all the Filipinos at the office together to make Filipino food for this intern. But then we realized that we needed it for ourselves just as much.
Are there a lot of Filipinos in the office? Or?
Well, we had our Kaibigan Club, as it's called, on Friday, and there were like 9 or 10 of us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Including interns, so that was nice.
And do they all work at different kind of levels and parts of like NPR? I mean, like...
It's like multi-generational, and they work from all different teams, from like the IT department to like code switch, so yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of when for like a very short stint, well, not short, I guess, it was like 3-4 years. I worked for, basically the government. I worked at the local homeless services agency. And I mean, I was there as a temp worker, and then I got hired on. And then on my first day, like this group of Filipinos in the office, there was about like 4 or 5 of them came to like congratulate me. It's like, welcome, our fellow Filipino brother. But it was funny because their assumption was that I got hired to work with them because all of them worked in the accounting department, overseeing kind of like the day-to-day, operations around the budget and stuff. And it's like, no, I'm actually going to be on the program side of the organization working on like these things. And there was like a mix of like confusion, surprise, but also at the same time, like, wow, you get to do something else, that we just thought all the Filipinos are here to do number crunching.
Wow.
And so there was kind of like this kind of oddly touching moment for me. It was just like, on the one hand, they had reached out to me, saw another Filipino coming in, after I confirmed that it was Filipino, they were so excited for me. But also to understand that I had a different career path before me and a different way of approaching the work that they were doing, that they didn't quite, weren't involved in, but could appreciate that, even if intentionally or unintentionally, I was bringing my Filipino-ness into that aspect of the work.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, I hadn't considered it up until that point. Do I bring my identity into those spaces? Because in the past, I've worked in Filipino nonprofits. I've done all the, so I'm used to that, right? But in stepping into the quote unquote kind of broader real world or whatever, I was like, well, that's just something I have to kind of keep to myself, keep to the side. That's just only mine. Realizing that in the workspace, one way or another, you're kind of confronted with it, whether positively or negatively. It's just in that situation, it was very positively. But yeah, I wish I had thought of starting a Filipino food club, because then I would have had more to eat than whatever was at the coffee shop on that day.
Yeah.
So.
But having been told by Tito Maro to try to learn to be white so that when you go to the work world, you can assimilate and succeed, basically. And then cut to, I just sauteed shrimp with the skin on in bagoong and bringing it to work, and we were all sitting there in the I just microwaved it in the community kitchen, and we were peeling it with our hands, shoving it in our face with a table of brown faces, and I was like, you know what, we've arrived, this is great.
So you've always connected with food in some level or another. Do you think those folks who you had lunch with would have come together without food as a center point? Do you think there would have been any other cause or reason why you would have even connected with other Filipinos in the office? Is it just, did it have to be food? Could it only have been food, or,
That's a really good question. I think it's a very easy way to gather people. Food for any culture or even any situation. I can't imagine. Well, I mean,
what other reason would you come together? I guess.
Filipino food is so hard to cook, and so hard. It is so hard to cook. So, when you have it and you make it, and you can share it with other people who it really hits a spot for them. That's a real big driver to want to attempt the food and share the food.
What have you attempted? I mean, is it something that you had to kind of learn as an adult, or something that was passed on to you by your family?
Passed on to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, my mom used to give me small tasks after school. First, cut the garlic, onion, and tomato and get it ready. So when I go home, then I can just make the food. And then it was then peel the calabasa, and then peel the shrimp, and then it was boil the pork for the sinigang, and then it turned into put the packet in, and then put the spinach in, and then put the radish in, and then it just turned into just make the sinigang for dinner tonight. And so that was nice. So by the time I became an adult, I couldn't do everything from memory, which is really nice. And at the time, I thought it was such a chore and really annoying. And why do I have to peel 2 pounds of shrimp? No one does this. And now I'm very grateful, so I can make a lot of dishes from memory.
Oh, I'm jealous, actually. I think because I grew up the way that I grew up in the community that I grew up in, it was easy for me to push away Filipino food. And my parents also had no urgency to teach me how to make any of it, because I was always I don't want to get hamburgers, But so I think as an adult and appreciating Filipino food now, and how that's kind of taken on kind of this whole different dimension, in the Filipino American kind of like, and broader American kind of culinary discourse.
Yeah.
Has been really interesting. But I think, the common thread has always been like food as a way to kind of bring folks together.
Yeah.
You know, like as either the reason for it or like a part and parcel of coming together with folks. Like, well, of course we're going to bring food here, you know?
We're going to do a karaoke get-together,
Oh my
too.
gosh.
Yeah. And there's like now 3 Filipino restaurants in DC. So we went to a Filipino food outing with the group. So wow, 3. So that's pretty amazing.
So you've been out here for like 10 years now. It sounds like, you know, you've basically kind of figured out, for the most part right now, where you've wanted to land. If you had to go back to Cerritos today, would you be able to do it? What would that feel like?
You know, I wonder whether I would care as much about being Filipino if I was in Cerritos. Because, like, then it would have been around me constantly. Like, my sister Minmin told me that, like, oh, there's this new, like, coffee shop that opened up called Cafe Republic, and they've got they've got like ube flavored like frappuccinos, and I was like, what? That's so amazing. I think that I wouldn't care about it as much. I think that the point is that, like, for me, expressing my Filipino-ness is to create an establish like a connection to home, and to like never forget that aspect of me. But if I'm already home, I probably don't need to do it because it'll be around me all the time. That's what I think it would be like.
Okay.
Yeah, but here I've learned that like to be Filipino, you need to really go out of your way to create your own community. So I learned that I did these Filipino food pop-ups with Chef Yana Gilbuena.
Okay.
She does these like Kamayan style like pop-up dinners and things like that. But I basically made this like Filipino food coloring book called The Little Filipino Food Coloring Book.
Really?
I'll give you a copy. But she basically cooked all the food from the coloring book, and then we did 5 dinners. They all sold out, and
awesome.
I just like met so many other half Filipino, half something or others, and I was like so happy. Like for the first time, I felt like, oh my god, like I'm not alone. And then that was like my moment where I was just like, I need to make a community so I can be around others.
So I guess the ironic thing then is like coming from a community in which there were a lot of Filipinos and a lot of other people of color and a lot of different identities, that in coming to a space in which that felt like there was a lack of that, in which maybe you finally kind of discovered your way to kind of engage with that part of your identity. Right?
Yeah, and I think that it really comes out of a need. Like, you know, actually I never thought about that. If Cerritos, like I probably wouldn't have needed to like express the Filipino part of myself, like go out of my way to do all this stuff. Here, it feels like a great gargantuan effort because A, I don't look Filipino, and B, there's very few Filipinos around here. So I feel like I'm like the star member of some Filipino club of my own making.
Oh man. So your book is coming out next year. Is there anything else that you're like working on or looking kind of forward to in the coming months or years that you're working on, or maybe you have planned another book even though the first one's not out yet?
Oh my god. I guess like one thing that is important to mention is that I'm also Egyptian, and I think that I spent a lot of my summers in Cairo with my dad and his family. He remarried, and I have 4 other siblings there.
Oh wow!
And I think those, like for some reason, those times together are so vibrant and rich to me, with cultural experiences that are just like, I feel like I want to explore more. Being like, I grew up with my mom in Cerritos, and she's Filipino, with my entire Filipino family who lived within a 5-mile radius from each other. So then transplanting that into Egypt, my dad would always say, like, why do you always talk why is your American accent so funny? Like, it doesn't sound, because I'm speaking with a Tagalog accent, like many people in the community. Yeah. Or like, why do you not know how to eat with a fork and knife? Because I'm Filipino, we eat with a spoon and fork. You know, like, and then also the different parenting rules, like between my mom and my dad. And then there's a whole religion thing. My dad is Muslim, my mom is Catholic. And having to lie to both of them and saying that I was the other. I think that, and then also not feeling feeling a sense of imposter syndrome in both settings. Yeah. With my parents, didn't ever feel Filipino with my mom, and I definitely didn't feel Egyptian with my dad, although I speak Arabic better than I speak Tagalog. So.
Oh, okay.
So I think that I would like to explore something there in another book or a zine. Yeah, that's like after this. But I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for that.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps.
So I guess until then, like, so where's your book going to be available? It's like one of those things like you from like...
Yeah, it'll
Amazon
be available on like Amazon. The publisher is Clarkson Potter. They've done a lot of books on... They've done Mari Andrews' book. She's a wonderful illustrator. Are We There Yet? They've done a lot of books for Momofuku and Lucky Peach. So they're like fun gift books. I think that you can find them everywhere, yeah.
And like, I know it's been a while since like you've done the zines, right? But like, can anyone find it? Can I get rolled to Skylights? It's like, hey, you need your back room box, and like, can you find it?
Yeah, no, you can find it on our Etsy shop, all of our zines. But I still make all. You can still like. I still update my Instagram. I have the I Was There American Dream. If you search it on Instagram, I put cartoons about my like identity and race there, and then on my Instagram at Malaka Gharib, I put my personal zines there.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I'm always like making little things.
So is there anything else you want to talk about that you're either working on, or is there anything else coming up at NPR? Are you going to invite the rest of us to like these karaoke and like potluck parties, or?
Yeah, people always ask. We know what's really wonderful is that people have been coming out of the woodwork and saying that they've started their own kaibigan clubs at their. Somebody from the Ford factory, I guess, in Detroit, like made their own kaibigan club there, which was nice. I thought that was great.
Yeah, you totally. I think like if I really thought about it, there's probably enough Filipinos in my office to start something. It's just a matter of like whether or not any of us want to cook, or we're just going to go to a restaurant and eat. The privilege of living in LA, I suppose. You can very lucky that you can do that. I have like 4 blocks to go to like Charles Olalia's Rice Bar. You know
what sucks is that if I really wanted to eat like, I don't know, like Chopin right now, there is no way for me to procure one. I would have to make it from scratch. I don't have a car. Like, there's no way for me to immediately procure one. So that's kind of a bummer.
So if anything, though, that makes you, again, kind of like in understanding your own Filipino identity, just appreciate it maybe just that much more.
Yeah, definitely. I will say one thing that drives me crazy is sometimes I feel like I'm overcompensating. And I don't really like that. It makes me feel weird. Like, I don't know.
I think, and I think, again, like what we try to explore with this podcast and trying to understand what it is that defines kind of Filipino America is the idea that, like, are we constantly trying to kind of find a set of definitions or values that are common, right? And I think, on the one hand, a lot of people will say, like, Filipino people tend to be very tribal, and that's why we can't really organize ourselves to get together and really do things on a larger level. Which on the one hand, I guess is kind of true, but at the same time, I think it's like, I would like to also believe that we're also trying to figure out what is our own personal Filipino-American identity and how we negotiate that in spaces in which we are either full of other Filipinos or maybe the only people in the room, right? And I think like, we all have a tendency to kind of try to like, be the best versions of ourselves. But I would posit that there probably is no possible way to overcompensate as long as you're being authentic and true to what it is you feel like is who you are. So, I think you always end up landing on where you need to be, I think.
That's nice.
So
I really like that.
So thank you again for inviting me over to your house, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Hey Ryan, do you have any extra dollars?
I don't.
I'm hungry actually. Right now.
I don't have any extra dollars for you, Joe.
What are you gonna use it then for?
I'm thinking of giving my extra dollars to TFAL's Patreon account.
Wait, TFAL has a Patreon account?
Yeah.
Patreon.com/TFAL podcast.
That's right. Patreon.com/TFAL podcast. If you want to help TFAL continue its great quality work, you can contribute some money to us monthly. Go to patreon.com/TFAL podcast and you can give your extra dollars to us.
Hey Joe, how much does your internet cost?
Hey,
a lot.
I don't know. That's girly.
Hey Mike, how much does this equipment cost?
A lot.
Hey Ryan, how much does your brain cost?
That's all I have. As you can see, we spend money to produce this free programming to you. and we could use your help. So find us on patreon.com/TFAL podcast and see if you can help us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Javier Fernandez. I started at this place with my wife, and she's my co-partner, Jennifer Fernandez. I was born in Cebu, moved here in '91. I kind of just market Filipino lechon belly, which is what we're about, slow roasted pork belly lechon. And we try to just do one dish at a time. This is my front of house manager, Dominic, and he's been part of the team for a few months now. We've only been open for about 3 months, so we're still kind of new in the game. Just trying to market one dish at a time, Filipino style, you know?
And so this place, Kuya Ja's, right?
Kuya Ja's.
Kuya Ja's. Okay.
Yeah, don't get it mixed up because there's a Kuya Ja's like chain in the Philippines too.
Oh, okay.
Totally different over there.
Tricky.
We're doing Kuya Ja's, and then we just, like I said, it's a lechon belly, fast casual in and out restaurant. So
I was talking to my friends about this too, and so you guys had a pop-up somewhere?
Yeah, we hosted a pop-up for about 2 years. My sister has a bakery, which my mom started about 15 years ago in her basement.
Okay.
They're a local Filipino pastry.
Yeah.
And they pretty much deliver to all the local Asian markets in the area. The whole DMV, Baltimore, down to Virginia, DC as well. And she has a warehouse which is about 2 minutes away from here, and we were just hosting weekend pop-ups there for the last year and a half just to build this place out and get that clientele, you know?
And then when did you open this spot exactly?
We opened beginning of May, the first week of May.
May 11th.
May 11th to be exact.
Of this year?
Yeah, this year.
Oh, you guys are brand spanking new.
3 months,
Oh my gosh.
So
So how's that experience been then?
We just started, like I said, it's been a hell of a ride. The first month or two.
Dude, first 2 days.
We were just selling out of bellies before we didn't we tried to
sold
open
out everything. We sold out everything. We couldn't sell anything. We had to close it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And obviously our main goal is not just to market the Filipinos, but it's to everybody else and promote cuisines itself. You know, that's what a lot of these young chefs are doing all across the country, which is promoting our cuisine. And obviously the Filipino movement has a big influence in that.
Okay. You know, I was wondering about that too. Like, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the Filipino food movement. There's been that documentary Ulam.
Yes.
That came out over the last couple of years.
Yep.
And that was very much centered around New York and LA food scenes.
Yeah.
But obviously the Filipino food scene is much bigger than that. And so how has that kind of experience been out here in the DMV? You know, what is that space like? Or is there a lot of other Filipino restaurants, a lot of people trying to innovate Filipino food?
Definitely. I think it's the
it?
new generation of Filipinos, chefs, who are actually trying to change that movement. They kind of set the standard, and a lot of these local chefs all across each state are actually trying to do the same thing. Obviously, Bad Saints here as well. They've put their foot down, and they're one of the best restaurants in the country right now.
Yeah.
It's a small in-and-out restaurant. We're just trying to change the game. We really try to market, like I said, to non-Filipinos, just non-Filipinos. Because, as you know, Filipinos, we're one of the biggest critics to our own food. And it's tough to please every Filipino because there's over 7,000 islands in the Philippines. Everyone's going to say their island, whatever island they come from, is traditional. So
And so we're here on a Sunday, and we came in, it was a little chill, and now it's getting a little bit crowded. So I'm gonna apologize for taking you away from the restaurant for a little bit. But I mean, like, is that typical of a Sunday here? Like, how's the reception been by the community?
Definitely weekends, a lot more Filipinos come out. During weekdays, there's more non-Filipinos as well. But I mean, it's been pretty good. Like I said, weekends, everyone just starts to come out and they want to try new food. So definitely.
And I think recently we've had 3 customers that have been hard of hearing. So I think it's moving into their community as well. Like, I don't even know. Like, we're just like, oh shoot, you know, we're getting more people, like, just from everyone. We're just getting all that outreach now.
So it was packed from day one. You always had like kind of this great like reception from the community. How has that been received by Filipinos, knowing what you were saying earlier? Like, do they kind of just look at your food and say, like, this is Filipino food? Have people, like, been critiques of that, have criticized that in any way? Whether or not it's, like, authentic or any of those other questions? Has that popped up for you in any way?
Overall, I mean, like I said, we can't please everybody. There's always going to be some Filipinos going to be like, oh, it's not as traditional. But like I said, we do our own twist of it, Kuya Ja's twist, we call it. But we still, like I said, we use local ingredients. We're not in the Philippines, so we do what best we can. We just try to make sure all the balance, all the flavors are there. Obviously, sweet, saltiness, and sourness is all there when it comes to Filipino cuisine. And
when I talk to like customers, I'm just like, you know, I just check up on them. And they're literally just like, dude, this is good. You know, like.
And that's the key factor, right? Like as long as it's good.
Yeah, as long as it's good. Like,
you know,
why does it have to be like your uncles, your aunts, or whoever? Like,
because you'll never make your mom's like adobo. You'll never make your uncle's like arroscaldo, right?
Right, but as long as the Filipino food is good, like. It tastes like adobo, like and it's good. What's the problem? You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't we all just do it? You know?
So are there a lot of other, like you said, you mentioned Bad Saint. Are there other folks?
There's a new restaurant that just opened up a month or two ago as well, Collyer.
Oh, yeah.
Well-known chefs over there. Chef Kat Armstrong, he's at Restaurant Eve, which is a French Costco restaurant. He's got a great Filipino team out there that's cooking amazing food. They cook everything in the house. More power to them, man. They have fully brigade system over there. And
so do you connect with those other folks and other restaurants? Is there a community of people trying to create food?
Actually, all the restaurant owners, Filipino restaurant owners, we kind of like know of each other.
Okay.
We follow all of us follow each other off through social media. Obviously, social media has just been a big thing when it comes to cuisine because that's how we promote that. It's free.
Yeah. So it's not just the lechon here, though. You also have the baked goods in the front.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Like I said, my sister's baked goods we sell out in the front of the house.
That's Quenny's?
Quenny's pastries, yes. They deliver twice a day, once in the morning and obviously once in the afternoon as well. So you get fresh baked goods, and it's not like these commercial nothing bad against Red Ribbon and like Goldilocks. I love those places. But like I said, we make everything in the house as well, and we don't use a lot of preservatives or anything like that, so it's fresh every day.
Yeah, I picked up some pandesal and like the cachita puto kind of mix over there, so I definitely bring that to my friends who are not Filipino and see how they kind of work.
It's for the non-Filipinos, they've never had Filipino food, so everything's just new to them, so it's easier to market to them. Easier to please those kind of crowds. So.
Because they don't have the expectation or the weight of like my mom's and dad's version.
Exactly. And then when they actually taste it, it's like right in your face, like sourness, saltiness, sweetness to it. I mean, it's a lot easier to market those people.
So is there like any one like overriding kind of like philosophy or set of values that you say you want this place to kind of perpetuate, or at least in terms of like, you know, what does this place represent to you in terms of like the Filipino community, I guess?
Like I said, we do lechon belly. We just focus on one dish at a time. So we don't try to do all traditional Filipino food like a lot of these other restaurants. If you keep it small and simple, I think that's the way to do it. You don't want to try to do the whole, especially in this market when there's not a lot of Filipinos, unlike California and New York where it's surrounded by Filipinos. So you can do the whole tour style of those areas, but here there's not much Filipinos, and if you do a tour style, it's like food has just been sitting out all day.
Yeah, the chafing dish food versus
I try to stay away from that and just make sure food comes out fresh, you know, and just presentable to these crowds who've never had Filipino food. And I think that's what a lot of these young chefs should be doing. Right? Just like I said, market to non-Filipinos, and you should be okay from there. A lot of the old traditional, I said, they go through that whole tour style, and then they market to Filipinos where population of Filipinos is not much, and after 2 years they end up closing down because it's just there's not enough clientele of Filipinos to actually keep restaurants going in these small like cities, unlike West Coast and New York and all that stuff.
So I guess, you know, my last question is, you know, what do you see as the future for this space? Is there going to be another one somewhere else in the area?
Yeah, we're actually, I've been talking to my team about doing like a Filipino barbecue style, skewers and beer. And we're actually trying to do like craft beer. I mean, craft beer all across the country is booming, so we're trying to do something like that. And like I said, we're just one concept at a time.
Okay.
And I think that's the way to go. Nothing too crazy big. Like here, we're just doing lechon belly, and then another could be the barbecue stand or whatever.
And I guess my real last question though is like, does being here in any way shape your approach to the food and your identities? And like this identity is like, because I'm a Filipino American from like the Los Angeles area, right? And I have a very specific kind of sense of what that means. But the question that I ask folks in other communities is like, does the place that you're in also inform the food that you're serving, the people that come in, and how they feel about Filipino food overall?
Yeah.
Is that a dimension of any of the things you do?
I mean, like I said, pork in general is a big thing all across the country, and people love bacon and whatnot. You kind of try to, I guess, compare it to American cuisine and have something that's like familiar to the non-Filipinos, you know?
Oh, as a way to kind of bridge and bring them in.
Bacon, pork belly, porchetta,
Because you might not know what lechon is necessarily, but you know pork.
Yeah.
And like I see the word pork and it's just like I'm coming.
Exactly.
you know?
That's kind of like what we're trying to do here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll let you guys get back to it. I mean, thanks for your time, but you know.
I appreciate you coming by.
No, yeah. Totally random that I was just here. Totally because of my friends, Dee and Diana. I was like, hey, we should go to this place. And
thank you so much.
You know, so. All right, well, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. This is Mike again out here in sunny/rainy/sunny Washington, D.C. Here talking to folks and understanding kind of like what their experiences and lives are like out here on the other side of the country. A lot of times people tell us when we talk about Filipino American experiences, it's all about like LA, West Coast, you know, Southern California, which is true. And I think because that's what we know. But I think when we try to come out to these communities, it's about like hearing, you know, what does the other experiences look like. And a lot of the folks I've been running into out here in DC so far have kind of had both. So I'm happy to sit here with our friend Eden, who actually went to UC Irvine with me and Elaine way back in the day. I honestly don't remember if we met before, but why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello everyone, my name's Eden Picazo and I live out here in Washington, D.C.
Great. So you went to UC Irvine with us, so where are you originally from then?
I'm originally, I guess, I'm like kind of like a Marine brat, so I've kind of like lived in a whole bunch of different places, but pre-Irvine, I lived in Rancho Santa Margarita in Orange County, South Orange County.
Yeah. So like as a Marine brat, like did you guys like move around a lot, or was it kind of?
We moved around a lot in Southern California, so I've lived like in Tustin, Twenty Palms, Barstow, and then we also lived in Yokosuka, Japan for like a few years.
Okay.
And then we moved back to Irvine, El Toro.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but I guess I'm technically a Navy brat, even though I lived in Oxnard my entire youth. My dad went to a lot of those same places. I think he was in Okinawa for a little while, but he was also like in Italy.
Was he on a ship?
No, he was like, because he did more like kind of logistics stuff, so he was on the base all the time. And like we didn't move with him, but like he moved around a lot, so we would go visit him basically. So I kind of know that experience a little bit. So how long have you been out here in DC now?
I moved out here last January, so January 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. So
how's that been so far?
It's all right. It's pretty cool. Getting used to it still. It's a little bit, because I lived in Brooklyn for like almost 12 years. And that makes me sound old, but yes, 12 years.
What are you talking about? We're both like young 22-year-old, like, you know, went to Irvine like a couple years ago.
But yeah, I lived in Brooklyn for like 12 years, so the pace is a little bit different, slower, getting used to it. Yeah, I mean, like, was it like a culture shock though? Like, even going from like Southern California to like Brooklyn and then Brooklyn to here? Yeah, I could say so. Definitely encounter a lot of more different people, different types of people in different fields, I guess. You know, like growing up in like Orange County and going to UC Irvine, you're like in a bubble.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, UC Irvine is like, at least when we were there, it was like 50-60% Asian American. So, and even then there was a lot of diversity within that, but like it was easy to feel like, oh, this is just how the world is, right? And then you leave that and you're like, oh my God, like where are the other Filipinos at, or where are the other like just people of color at, you know?
Exactly. But yeah, I moved out to New York for grad school. So after grad school, I got a job, and then I just stayed there. So I got this new job. It's in DC.
So like let's move back to like Southern California. And you moved around a lot. Did you have a lot of family in Southern California just in general, or was it just like your
in
family?
Southern California, like my dad's like second cousins lived down there, so we had like some aunts and uncles that, and some cousins that we would like spend Christmas holidays with.
So it wasn't like.
But most of my my first cousins and stuff, they lived in San Jose.
Also, you go up to the Bay also sometimes.
yeah, I mean, like, for me, like...
And there's a lot of Filipinos there, and then that was totally different. Like, when I was going from Orange County to, like, San Jose, it's like, okay, there's a lot of Filipinos here.
Oh, there's tons.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of friends, especially at Irvine, there was a lot close in the Bay Area in general, so it's kind of like... Even then, like, even though we're all from California, like, a very different Filipino experience. So in moving around a lot, though, were you able to kind of connect with, like, a Filipino community beyond, like, your own family, I guess?
Yeah. Like, you know, in the military, it's like you connect with the other Filipino military families that are on the base. So throughout the years, I think my parents still keep in contact with a lot of the people that they met on the different places that we're stationed at. So yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like just as much family as like any other.
Yeah. So I like grew up like going to like family parties and stuff with those people.
Yeah, I try to explain this to like the rest of like the TFAL crew, and it's like it's hard to explain because it's like I'll call these people like aunties and uncles or cousins.
Yeah, exactly.
No blood relation whatsoever. The only real relation is they're also Navy family. You know, those kind of things. And so I think it's very unique to kind of like that experience is that you're building kind of a community and a family
exactly.
out of the Filipinos that you kind of just run into kind of like as part of like your life in that.
Yeah, like a lot of those people there, like they became like godparents to like I think like my brother, and sister.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I think like even like my confirmation sponsor. Yeah. And then you go to Irvine where there's like a lot of Filipinos there too. Were you involved with like Kaba in Pennsylvania?
I did Kaba like a little bit like in the beginning of my first and second year at Irvine. But I think I did PCN my second and third year. Like I did like when it was cool, I was in trads when it was like all the second years of that was fun. I remember and Elaine was in it. I remember.
No, yeah.
She was in that one.
Yeah, like Elaine was like the super Filipino, like compared to like my like two Filipino that I knew, which was Elaine and my other friend Dee, who lives out here too, actually. Yeah, like very strong and like basically like internationally known like Filipino groups now. So then from going from like having like your military family and being in Southern California to like when you see Irvine where there's like a whole different set of Filipinos but folks that you connect with in some way, some other, to going out to grad school out in like New York.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
It was different, very different. Cause like I was like kind of like a commuter student at Irvine, so I lived at home like I think a couple of years while I was at Irvine, and then I lived like by campus like 2 years I think. Yeah. But yeah, living on my own, not near any family was like it was lonely, but also I wanted to finish grad school and like do that. But yeah.
And what did you go to grad school for?
I went to grad school for library and information science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very like I don't know, not very many people know about it. Yeah. But I must recommend people going to the panels at UC Irvine because like that's how I found out about library sciences. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated, so I like attended some of the career panels that they had, and that's how I found out about library science. And then I applied to different schools, and I got into Pratt in Brooklyn, and I went.
So did you end up doing something with that experience, career-wise, or what did you end up after that?
After that, I actually got I should say when I was in grad school, I got an internship through one of my classes with Spike Lee.
Okay, Spike Lee.
Yeah, so I worked on, he was doing When the Levees Broke, the HBO documentary at the time. So I did like a lot of like archival photo research. So I was an intern on that. And then after I graduated the following year, I was like looking for work, looking for jobs. And like my supervisor, like I had contacted her to see if I could use her as a reference. And then she like recommended me to intern at 40 Acres again for Spike. While I was looking for work. So started interning there like maybe 2 or 3 months later. They offered me a job. So I was there for like almost 11 years. I think, yeah. 11 years? Yeah.
Yeah, like no short amount of time. So I know we buried the lead a little bit there, but yeah. So you spent a lot of your early professional field working for filmmaker Spike Lee.
Yeah.
And it's like, not that was like initially your intention for moving out to New York, but that's because it became your life. So talk a little bit about that experience. So like, on what side of the house did you work? Were you like helping with like, you know, archival research?
Yeah. Pretty much, my job was pretty much like kind of like figuring out what was there and then trying to make sense and order and try to.
So like archiving the things that he was creating.
Yeah. That he was creating, that he collected, that kind of stuff.
So there was a natural kind of bridge from library sciences into kind of like.
Yeah, because library science, I got it involves archiving too. So yeah.
So what I guess like
the difference between libraries and archives are pretty much archives. They collect and handle whatchamacallit? Oh God, can't forget. I just forgot. Primary sources. Sorry. Okay. Primary stuff. So it's like kind of like original work, kind of. Versus libraries, it's like published stuff that you're like you have multiple copies of. Yeah. Archives is like original items that you can't really find anywhere else, and it like relates to wherever you like work for or where you're working.
So like backtracking a little bit, like when you first initially got into like the idea of like library sciences from a seminar that you attended at UC Irvine to like, I mean, was there something that like specifically like drew you into that field? Like were you just like, wow, that looks like super interesting? Or?
At Irvine, I worked at the Langston Library. And I didn't really think about library science at that time, but then at that panel there was someone that worked at the Grammy Museum.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she was a librarian, and I was like, oh, they have librarians at the Grammy Museum. I never imagined like there were people like librarians or archivists at like different types of in different types of fields. So I initially wanted to like work for like a record company or something in like their library, that type of thing. And then I ended up in film. but I mean, film, it encompasses like music and like all sorts of other things. So
it's all sorts of mediums.
Yeah, exactly. So it like worked out.
And so like you've gotten the chance to like, I guess, is it like both kind of looking back at like Spike Lee's kind of like works that they had like basically storing spreadsheets and trying to bring some like order to the chaos, right?
Like I started from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah. I just like, because it was hard to like, it's easier just to start from the like zeros and having to figure out what other people did type thing.
Okay. So like from going back to like kind of looking at the things he's already created to like, I guess not tagging along, like continuing to like work with him as he creates new works of art, new films, new media, and bringing some like kind of like process to that. I mean, was that something that was difficult to do, knowing you were starting from ground zero, or is there like I guess there's a standard that you have to follow, or did you just create it all your own?
I kind of, I took what I learned in library school and tried to like apply it, try to figure out how I could apply it to the stuff that I was working with. Like I figured out like a database that we could use, that we could like log everything, that type of stuff. I mean, I was still like trying to learn about like the company and all the like different films and all that stuff. So I was like learning. It was a learning curve, but I got the hang of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you already have like an interest in like the things he was creating in terms of films? Did you already know like his body of work? Or?
I knew some of it, but not like. I wasn't a hardcore. Yeah.
So it wasn't like, I'm going to get into library sciences so I can go find like Spike Lee and like get to touch all his creations.
No.
It just kind of like all kind of like worked out in this certain way.
Just like, it did.
Okay. Is that something that you do by yourself? Like, do you have like a team? Like, does Spike Lee literally come and say like, hey, I want you to like make sure you take care of these things? Like,
Initially, it was just me. And then over the years, I had like some interns and some of like our coworkers would help with like certain projects. But
But I guess it also gave you kind of like a unique window into like the things he was developing at the time as well.
Yeah, like it was nice to be able to build an archive from the ground up type thing. Yeah.
Were you like the only Filipino person there at the time?
It's hard to say.
Oh, because it's like maybe like a big.
No, it's like there's like the people that work at 40 Acres, and then there's like because there's always like production, so there's always like different types of people.
Kind of coming in and out.
There's people coming in and out. But I guess you could say I was like the mainstay Filipino person, I guess.
Okay. The one who's there like watching it all in some way or another.
One's like in the little corner, at her desk.
I mean, is it common amongst like filmmakers like to have like a production office that also is in charge of like preserving kind of the legacy of what is being created?
I guess it depends on the director, but I know Martin Scorsese has one.
Okay.
Like I remember he did like one of those like 2020 one of those kind of shows, and they like actually went into his archive and like got to see all his like stuff that he's collected from all the films that he's done. But I guess it really depends on whoever. Because like people don't really think about it until like later, you know. Like
until it's just like, oh my god, like maybe we should remember some of these things.
Yeah.
And put it somewhere important, you know.
Yeah, like maybe we should take care of this. Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess because what is the intent and goal then is like to come out with some kind of compendium that like kind of is like a retrospective of that, to create like a literal physical like edifice in which these things are available for people to like consume. Is it just like for his own personal records? You know, it's kind of like. I guess what is like the goal in kind of the broadest sense?
I think it was just to like collect figure out what he has, and then like if he wanted to like use something, then he could like retrieve it type thing. Yeah.
So you were there for you said like 11, 12 years? Or
Yeah. 40 Acres?
Yeah.
Yeah, like almost 11 years. Okay. I think. Yeah.
So you're in DC now. You work for the government, right?
Yes, a government archivist.
And so continuing with that whole idea, is it like about like preserving history and culture for the sake of just preserving it, or is it really like?
It's preserving things that have value.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. You don't. Yeah. Things that. Well, whoever the archivist or whatever, whatever your collection management plan or whatever is, you follow that and figure out whether the item or whatever record has some sort of value that people will look to in the future.
Okay.
Kind of like, I guess, like say like someone's biography record or whatever. Like, you wouldn't find that in any other place besides here. And for a certain date or time and space.
I mean, like, and just trying to navigate all of that, right? And kind of figure out what's important versus, like, what is just, like...
Yeah.
I mean, I like to make the joke that, like, I'm, like, a life archivist, but really just, like, a hoarder. You know? Like, I just refuse to throw things away, but I can also assign value to almost anything. Like, oh, that ticket stub was from that time that I went to that show that was, like, it was, like, raining and, like... The show was terrible, but I want to remember that moment forever. You know, I mean, just like even thinking about like even working with like Spike Lee and then like the tons of like footage and notes and everything, and trying to figure out what has like value in terms of preservation versus just like these are just things that came from that era, but is it like meant for archiving, right? You know, it's like it's almost like you might have like a set of criteria and like a structure to that, but also it's like a judgment call, right? You know, and like finding a way to like navigate all of that too. Like if they go back into it, they basically need you to like be like the navigator.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think of like what do you think people would want to like find out about whoever, like this person or this company or whatever, this entity, and you just apply it to whatever you're looking at. Like, I think. Like this letter that he wrote or this person wrote to another director or whatever seems like would be something to, like you can't find that anywhere else type thing.
Was there any one project that was particularly interesting for you or like?
Yes, the one that I won an Emmy for.
Oh yes, let's talk about that.
I got an Emmy for doing archival research for what is a triangle offense.
Oh,
it was like it was like when whatchamacallit. I can't even think of like. Why can't I think of his name?
It'll come to you.
Yeah, it'll come up to me. I don't know. Why can't I think of his name? Oh my god. It's like I spent like so many like weeks looking up stuff about like the triangle offense. But it's
Phil
pretty
Jackson?
much yes.
I was like, it'll come to you, right?
Yeah.
I'm from SoCal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like Lakers, the Bulls.
Yeah, it's all good.
Like, yeah. I could see his face, but and I knew it was Jackson, but I always forget his first name. But yes, and that's horrible.
So Phil
But,
Jackson, yeah.
Phil Jackson, but yes, because he had just come to. That was when he first came to the Knicks, I guess, as the whatever his position was at that time. But yeah, it was pretty much for the MSG network. It was like But it was we did a documentary on the triangle offense and just like seeing how it was in the Lakers, how was it for the Bulls, and then just like the history of that play, I guess. Yeah.
And are you a big basketball fan, or is it just like compelling to you? And
I like basketball. I'm not a hardcore basketball fan.
but you're Filipino,
I know. But yeah.
No worries.
But I am for the Lakers.
Okay.
Growing up in SoCal. So
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
At least that's what Joe would say if he was here. It's like, as long as you're for the Lakers. Except for Ryan, who's a big Clippers fan, which we won't talk about right now. And so you got an Emmy for that.
Yes.
And so like, how does one even like, is that like, I guess what's the criteria for that? I'm really curious.
How what?
What's the criteria for that? Like,
For getting.
Yeah, and I mean, like in that specific, because this is one of those things that you'll never see like at an actual Emmy Award show. Right?
Yeah, it's I don't know how because they gave an Emmy for the people that worked on the team, so I was part of the team. But I think it's like there's like a whole process of like submitting your whatever documentary or film or whatever as an entry, and then they'll like kind of like pick the top whatever 5, and then they'll Academy or whatever they vote for whichever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so do you actually have an Emmy like sitting at home? Is it like certificate or?
Yeah, it's at my house.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Should have gone over there.
I know.
So, knowing that you kind of went through from like the path that you ended up like doing all of that, I guess was that like something that you, if you think back to like even back to like college and before, like do you feel like you kind of landed and ended up doing all of that work as a natural kind of extension of like your interests, or was it like it just kind of like kept on happening, like, well, that's interesting, or that's an opportunity?
Yeah, I think
and what do your parents think about that?
Well, I don't know. I really liked research stuff, like because I was a double in bio and history.
Bio and history?
Yeah, I know it's weird combination.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you pass OChem?
I did actually. Yes, I did pass OChem.
So for anybody who's been to UC Irvine and knows anyone who's a bio major, organic chemistry was like the make or break kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
Figure out whether you're gonna finish that degree.
I liked OChem versus GChem, which is weird. I liked research.
Okay.
So, and I didn't realize that you could, besides working in like in a lab or working in academics, that I could utilize my researching skills in other fields.
Just really kind of like exploring and understanding through both research and really kind of just, even like as you're archiving things that are kind of happening in place, it's really kind of like allowing people also to be part of that journey of like understanding.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize you in film there are you can be a researcher, and like especially for like documentary work, there's people they're always looking for. I feel like they're looking for researchers all the time, especially. And if you're good at researching, I would recommend that.
Oh man, if I had only known.
I know.
I wouldn't have ended up becoming like a data analyst instead, but you know. But I mean, I think about like this podcast and the conversations that we have with folks. It's about like, on one level, it's really kind of just having people tell like their personal stories, but also in a way that we archive, kind of like the complexity and kind of like the cross sections of like Filipino American life in like this country. Okay, go. So for us to kind of document, archive, and like really kind of understand that the Filipino experience isn't like this monolithic one thing. And that you've been on like your own journeys too. And kind of like, and sharing that with people. I think like so now that you're here in DC and that you're working with for the government, is this where you feel like you want to be like for the long term? It's like, do you see the place you feel like you've settled in, like this is it, or you continue to explore? I guess that
I'm still like exploring, but I eventually want to move back to California to be closer to where my parents are.
Okay, and you go back pretty often?
I do, maybe like once or twice a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always ask folks like who've been gone for a long time, like, are you ready for like the culture shock of how different things are in California these days?
Like even just going home for like a few days, it's like, what is this? When did this like get built? Why is there so much traffic? I'm like, but then I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for driving again because I haven't driven like on a regular basis.
See, that's very like I don't even understand that. Like, I don't know how I would survive without a car, but I mean that's a very LA thing.
Yeah.
Whereas on the East Coast, you have options.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you been to the Philippines?
Yes, I have been very many times. I think.
How many is very many?
I think like close to 20, like 18, close to 20.
God.
Yeah.
So one for every year you've been alive, right?
Yeah.
So what has that experience been like? Do you like just go just to go, or do you always have like family on a visit, or is it just
like my mom's side, like they live in the Philippines, and then both of my sets of grandparents, they were in the Philippines, so we would like visit like my family, we would visit them like maybe like every couple of years or whatever. But
like what province or I guess like part of the Philippines?
My family is from La Union in the north.
Okay.
In the Ilocos region. So my parents are Ilocano. Yeah. So we pretty much we would visit them often. And plus I lived in Japan, so it was like a 4-hour flight.
Yeah.
So like we went.
I can understand that. Yeah.
We went there like almost every year that we lived there.
Okay. And then when you go and visit, like, well, I mean, this is like long past now, but like, when people ask you, like, so what do you do, like, in America? You know?
Yeah, I did. They're like, what's an archivist? And I'm like, I'm an archivist.
So I guess how would you break that down for them? Or do they even like, okay, you're like...
it's like an I just say, like, I'm an archivist. I work in an archive. And they kind of know what an archive is. I'm like, it's like a library.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's not like, oh, that's nice. Well, so when are you going to become a doctor? It's not like when you use that biology.
I'll
like
past that. I'm not going to be a doctor anymore.
So, are you going to go again this year? Or?
I might go maybe next year, maybe. I don't know. My parents want us to go, or me and my stepbrother and my sister-in-law and my niece. But we'll see, because I guess they're like building a house and they want us to visit, kind of thing.
Been there, done that, yes.
Yeah. So
my parents had this idea that it would turn their house into like an Airbnb situation. Like, I'm not managing your property in the Philippines for you.
Yeah. But I mean, because my family is from in Kaba. That's their town. Okay. So that's like way up north. I don't think people are really trying to visit there. I mean, it's kind of near San Juan, like the surf capital or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not really a place people would want to Airbnb. I don't think.
Yeah. No, my family's from Iloilo. Specifically Niaga, Iloilo, and like it's close enough to like Boracay that they're like, oh, people on the way to Boracay can stay at like our house. I was like, no, that's not gonna happen. You know, like I was gonna go south of Iloilo into this random town and then go to like Boracay. They're gonna go to Boracay.
Have you been to Boracay?
Yeah, a couple times. It's been a while, but I mean, like, and we used to go back every couple years, and like I just have stopped going just because I don't have the time as an adult, professionally, to like take a time off.
I know it's hard to like take time off to actually to go there, because then it's like, especially coming from the East Coast, it's like takes even longer to get there. So it's like pretty much like 2-3 days of traveling.
Oh my gosh.
Like both back and forth or whatever, and then the drive from Manila to
because you have to take that's hard.
But the super highway has been like super great the last couple of times, because like before, like when I was a kid, it took like 8 hours to go from Manila to La Union, but now it takes like 4, which is like pretty much cut in half, which is pretty awesome. And yeah.
So I guess like, is that the kind of thing that you feel like is always going to be part of your life? Is like kind of going back to the Philippines and connecting with your family out there, or like is that just like something that you kind of just do with your family here as a kind of a reunion, return back? You know, I always think about this because I haven't been back to the Philippines in a while. Friends go all the time. If they ever stop going, I don't know if I have any reason to go on my own, for example, right? Or if I'm close enough to my family out there that I would even like be comfortable with doing that without my parents or something else, you know?
I think since I've gone so many times and like I grew up seeing all my cousins that live in the Philippines and I'm like, you know, I know them pretty well, I guess. So I would think I still feel comfortable because I've gone to the Philippines without my parents. So
I have yet to do that, and I feel like it's a very different experience probably. I've always known my parents, and my parents always like, stay out of Manila, it's dangerous, or like we're gonna go out to the province and that's it. You know, like we don't want to go into the big city because that's where all the crime happens or whatever. You know? And I think I've only been to Manila once without them, and it was just like very much escorted experience.
Oh really?
So, you know,
like I went with one of my high school friends. She's Vietnamese, and we went on our own to the Philippines, and it was fun. I mean, we still visited like my family, but we also went to like we went to Boracay that time.
Oh, yes. So, I guess like in all those experiences, and like now that you're out here and kind of like settling into kind of like a new role, a new career, do you feel like you've brought any of that with you here? And like, have you like engaged with like Filipinos out here in any way? You know?
One of my best friends, like growing up, she's lived out here since like I think the end of high school, which was a while ago. Not that long ago, but you know. But she's lived out here, and so I've met other Filipinos through her. Yeah, so those are the extent of the Filipinos that I know are in DC.
When I was talking to somebody else earlier today, it was about like the fact that like she hadn't really thought about like other Filipino communities until she realized that she wanted to find a way to connect with that, and the way that she found to connect with that was through food. And even earlier today, I went to like a restaurant, Kuya Ja's. I have no like point of reference to. It's like if I came here like cold and said like, hey, where are the Filipinos at? I wouldn't have no idea where to start. I have no idea what that even mean. If there's even like a cohesive like community to engage with, right? But somehow or another, she found them because they sought her out. And was like, hey, you're Filipino too? Like, hey, let's have lunch together and like we'll bring food. Cool. And so I think like, you know, even like living in Southern California, and working in a professional world in which there's not a lot of other Filipino faces, like somehow or another, like we get like drawn to each other, like kind of like by moment and by like accident sometimes. And so like, you know, do you feel like that's something that you're gonna want to engage with in some way or another if you're out here for like an extended period of time?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I haven't really, like I tried like the different Filipino restaurants here.
Like Bad Saint.
Yeah. But I know, well, my friend Nikki, she's the one that like pushes me to go out. So where if she wants to try places, I'm like, okay, whatever. They've had like some like Filipino pop-ups. I've gone to a couple of those.
Oh, yeah.
Those are fun. And it's nice because they're like so like kind of like intimate, and then you like get to like meet other Filipinos that are like in the area.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
So you're not gonna be moving back to like Southern California anytime soon?
I don't know. Hopefully, well, I have to find a job.
That's kind of the critical thing, right?
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
I need to find a job before I
And
move
even
back.
with the friends that I've been hanging out with here this weekend, while I'm out here in DC, like they're moving back to the West Coast. So one of them is from the West Coast, she's moving back. And I even asked her, like, is that going to be like culture shock for you because you've been gone for so long? And I think she's like, it might be, but I'm like excited about it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, you know, there's a familiarity even if she never really engaged with it at that same degree.
Yeah. Is her family out there?
Yeah. And so like even when I was at Irvine, when we were at Irvine, like, you know, I think because there were so many Filipinos, I never felt that urgency, you know? And I think it was after that I started trying to figure out like, is this a part of my life or is it just who I am in terms of my identity-wise? So, and so it's always interesting to me to kind of like just ask folks like, is Filipino-ness like a part of your life, like front and center, or is it just like who you are and you kind of traverse through life as that's something that exists? So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, so well, thank you for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me. I listen to you guys all your episodes, so happy
I don't even listen to the show, so thank you for listening to the show. We need those numbers, right?
Okay.
Don't forget to rate us and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But no, thank you for coming out here and again this sunny weather.
I know.
Very typical of DC.
Yeah.
And sharing your story with us. So.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.